I don't know when he died. I literally I deliberately didn't want to remember. It really didn't get any better. I mean, it got about 10 million times worse. It was interesting the help that I got because it wasn't helpful. I was a mess. I just turned into a complete. I feel like loss has been my life, and that sounds really sad. What irks me and what pains me so much is that I spent so like I really kind of reckon I spent like 10 good years of my life grieving my friend, like in a really painful way. And I just think, why, like, I decided to do this podcast. Why did I decide to do this podcast? Why do you think I decided to do this podcast?
To help others understand,
Yeah,
to
and what are we talking
kind
about?
of get your story out and how you manage to help yourself and how it could be beneficial for other people, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important. So I'm Pip and this is Tim. Um and we're going to be having conversations. So Tim is my lovely partner and I've been I would tell you about my life story as we go along, but I mean me and Tim are going to be having this conversation about like how my life started, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and where we got up to, and things like that. So, primarily, this is about mental health, specifically surrounding grief. So, you know, I will talk about kind of like why I got to where I'm at. Um, so the heartfelt story that I've got is like about 12 years ago. I, I keep saying 12 years ago. I've been saying 12 years for a while now, and I think like maybe it's more than that, but I think it's about 12 years ago now.
Do you
It
not remember the year? That'd be easier.
No, ironically, I actually when my friend died, it was so tragic that like I didn't actually want to remember the date or the year. I don't know when he died. I literally I deliberately didn't want to remember because I didn't want every year to come around and remember the day he died. So yeah, that's a weird one for me because like I don't have an anniversary for his death. I have I celebrate his birthday and things like that. So um, yeah, that's a really interesting point. So yeah, I don't know. I know he was around 21 and I was around 20. Um, and I'm 33 now. So 13 years, give or take,
Yeah. Okay.
depending on the time of year. So again, it's approximate. But yeah, so about about 12 to 13 years ago, my best friend died, and it was the most devastating thing that probably could have ever happened to my life. Um, and I think what I reflect on a lot about these days is that like I was already in a really bad mental state. I had anxiety. In fact, I've had a lot of anxiety until relatively recently. Um, and had definitely was I was never like diagnosed with depression, I guess, throughout my life, but like I can only describe that feeling of, just not wanting to wake up in the mornings and all sorts of things like as depression. I can't even remember what it felt like. I mean, I've had moments of depression more recently that I can describe more like that. But like, I think for
Sort of
me,
hit rock bottom, sort of way or not.
yeah, it was like you didn't know whether you were coming or going kind of feeling.
Mm.
I'm sure a lot of people kind of resonate with that feeling. I know that you probably also have resonated with that
Yeah,
sort of
the odd
feeling.
the odd time.
um, yeah, and so it's a tricky one to talk about. And I think like I realized that because of my negative mental health state at the time, I think what it did have, like it did actually have a much bigger impact on me when I lost my friend. And I'm not saying that like you have to you know the only way to grieve or the only way to mourn and the only way to be validated by that is to have a bad mental health state. That's really not what I'm saying at all. I just think like I reflect on it now that the impact that it had might have been amplified massively by the fact that I already wasn't in a good place. I already wasn't managing things very well. I wasn't dealing with loss very well in any state of any kind. I didn't deal with change. I didn't deal with moving house. I think when I was like, actually, I can't really remember, but I remember, um, I mean, getting rid of like little trinkets and stuff was devastating to me. I'd hold on to literally everything. Um, and until it was like until I was kind of made not to have it anymore, like teddies and things, and I've still got like loads of old teddies from when I literally was a baby, I still have not let go of.
Mm.
And I thought they'd gone years ago, and I was kind of thinking, hopefully, if they've gone, I don't have to deal with getting rid of them. But like the actually getting the process of getting rid of something for me, it's just been so hard. And I think, yeah, I just think like there's so much stuff I've learned about now that now makes me understand like the way that I dealt with those sorts of, if I couldn't deal with like even letting go of something like a toy, no, there's no way I could have even dealt with losing a person. Not even slightly, like the two don't even compare, but it's just like, and I know when I like do my grief course with people, like we go into detail about this, and we'll go into maybe more detail about these sorts of things because this is kind of what I want to talk about. I want to like elaborate more on, or even sort of get the information out there of like how possible it is to start to feel better from things like grief.
Mm.
Because like I think what irks me and what pains me so much is that I spent so like I really kind of reckon I spent like 10 good years of my life grieving my friend, like in a really painful way. And I just think, why, like, the, I think the thing, it's so hard for me to sort of explain it because I feel like now I'm kind of on the other side of it. I'm like, oh, it's so easy to heal and things like that. And maybe it's not easy to heal in some regards and things like this. But honestly, to God, I wish I had known more what I know now than I ever did in my entire life regarding um grief and grief recovery and kind of like find as what I kind of like really love to call like finding closure.
Mm.
Finding closure is kind of like my coin term now for everything that I kind of liken to like recovering from grief because it kind of really feels like that. Um, and maybe like in a different podcast, like sort of explain more about like sort of like little what I consider as like opening and closing of loops, I think, in our brain and how it sort of like deals with stuff. Because like it's
Mm.
a I just find it really fascinating in some in a way um that we can always be opening these loops all the time. But if we don't close them off and we don't understand how what we're doing and we're kind of like opening things in our brain. I mean, maybe I'm explaining it really badly right now, because I'm not going into detail about it, but um I just think it's like the thing I always liken it to, I think I explained to you about if someone like you call someone up and um before you've had time to sorry, before you've said goodbye, you hang up. Or vice versa, or the other person like, you're on the phone to someone and then they hang up before saying goodbye, and you're kind of like, did you ever this is a really weird reference. Did you ever watch 24?
No, it's one thing I never actually started watching.
Oh, it was for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it was like an American drama about terrorists, I think. But for some I think it was this show. I'm actually not sure. But for some reason, it's probably happened in loads of TV shows, but have you ever noticed, and it really irks me, it's like whenever like they go through the show, um, and um they just never say goodbye at the end of the phone call.
Yeah, I
Have
mean,
you seen
I've seen that in when it again old shows like CSI
Oh really?
when or the CSI
It's
Miami
like I'm
ones
done talking now. And
when
then
they're
they
on
just
the
like hang
phone,
up.
you get this information and I'll get this, and then they hang up, and it's just I mean, even watching the Monk programs, they do the same thing when they're
Yeah, they must just
talking, and all of a sudden they just hang up without even saying goodbye or anything. And it's always like a TV.
apparently 7 p.m. according to Alexa. Um
Technically, she's right. That's just slow.
oh yeah. Her clock is also slow,
Yeah.
very slowly. Sorry, what were you gonna say? You were saying, yeah.
I mean, I've seen it in many TV shows where it's always the detective ones that have always they
Like
answer
don't
it.
take the time to say goodbye. It's
They
like
answer it with their name, and then that's that.
I find it fascinating. I realized how much it was bothering me. And I was like, wait a minute. And I kind of get it now because it's like saying goodbye is so important.
Mm.
Like being able to finish what you're saying.
I think one time when again on CSI Miami when they're obviously saying I'm going to go and find out this information or speak to them, they say at the end, "Keep me posted," and then hang up.
Yeah, but that's fine.
I
That's the
did
kind
that
of
to my brother once. He found it funny.
Yeah, but that is a closing statement. Keep me
Yeah,
posted. Do
but
you know what I mean?
you expect it to be like a goodbye or speak to you later or something. It's not a keep me posted, just means keep me posted. Sure. Okay, bye. It's still
Yeah,
missing the okay bye, but obviously
it's better. I would say it's better. It's better than having
it's
like
how it's played by the in this case the
because if
actors
someone
that
says,
actually works out
I'll
well.
meet you around the corner in 5 seconds." I guess it's kind of got a leading to be like, but there's just some times where I swear they were just like saying something that just had like it
All right,
was
I'm on
no.
my way in there. I'm on my way in there now. I'm going.
It's like I can't even give an example, a really good example, but I mean I'll watch some TV and I'll work out where it is. But yeah, it was just like this really weird inability to like really say the things you need to say, close off these gaps, say these things that need to be
Mm.
said. And I think like we experience it all the time. Um, and I just find it fascinating. But coming back to like what I was really trying to talk about was what was I talking about? We're
I
talking
don't know.
about
All I remember is the saying goodbye on the phone now or not saying goodbye.
oh dear. This is what is so funny because I get so passionate about all sorts of stuff and I go off a random tangent. I could never even remember what I was originally talking about.
Yeah, I
But
know.
I find it really I was talking about like, the loss of my friend and everything. And I really can't remember now because I can't stop thinking about these loops. But yeah, I think it's such an interesting analogy. It's such an interesting way of really thinking about it. And we all think about finding closure. You kind of think like, oh yeah, it's so obvious. Of course I want to find closure for this. Of course I want to find closure for what happened. Of course I want to find closure.
Mm.
And it's like, but no one tells you how to find closure.
Yeah.
Like finding closure is fine. Like the idea of it. I've heard it like flung around there all the time. But if someone said like, how do you find closure? I would like now I'd be able to tell you. But like years ago,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a clue. And
It's the orange ring.
our little dog is playing with his little toy. Oh, he's so cute. Just like staring at me. Hello, Bubbles. You're okay. Um, hello, I know. I know. Yeah, so it was such a tragic loss for me. I think what I was reflecting on is that like I suffered with a lot of anxiety and mental health problems. And to be honest, after I lost my friend,
Mm.
it really didn't get any better. I mean, it got about 10 million times worse. I can only really reflect on.
Yeah.
Um, I I was at uni, I think I was in my third year at uni. Um, I mean, I almost didn't finish my final year, I guess. I did. I took a month off completely because I could not think, function, anything. I
Mm.
just stopped. I think I was at home. I think it was like Easter break, alluding to around the time he died, but like I don't have a specific date, but it was like, yeah, it was something like that. And then I remember going back to uni and I just like I did the bare minimum throughout my
Mm.
third year. I think it was like the last, I don't know, it was the last few months of my third year. I don't know if you can hear our dog, but
It's definitely not off stomachs, that's for sure.
he's in a grummer. Making a grumbly sounds. Um, unless the microphone is too good and you can't hear him because with all this modern technology these days, it's
Mm.
interesting what they
Mm.
cut out. But yeah, I just remember it just being such a horrendous time. I think what I reflect on in a really weird way is the fact that, and this really sticks with me, and this still sticks with me today, is the fact that no one around me could possibly even understand what I was going through at the time. I already felt misunderstood because of the whole sort of maybe anxiety, I didn't struggle to make friends or at least keep friends or have good friends. And that was really hard, especially like through school. And when I was younger, we moved around a lot. And so I now I've forgotten that thought.
You lost of your friend, that's all I remember.
This is what Tim is here for, to remind me of what I'm talking about.
I remember the start of the conversation, that's all.
um, but yeah, it was no, genuinely can't remember what I was talking about. I was talking about my third year at uni. Oh my God, I've genuinely forgotten.
Third year in uni, Easter break, you took a
Yeah, I
month
took a month
off.
off. Yeah, I took a whole month off. The dog is not eating his toy, and it's like,
off-putting.
It's really off-putting. It's so funny.
And you weren't sure if you were going to finish your final year, which you didn't, or your third year, which you did in the end. That's something else you mentioned.
Yeah, it was really tough. And obviously, like, I was devastated by what happened completely. I mean, I think, yeah, mental health declined massively so. And I think, like, oh, that was it. Yeah, I was talking about like other people just didn't understand me. I just felt more isolated. I think the worst thing that I felt like happened to me, apart from obviously losing my friends, I felt more and more and more isolated from other people.
Mm,
I just kind of ended up like not feeling like validated in my feelings because I just didn't. It was so weird. It was like I've described this as well as like grief makes you feel selfish. And it sounds like the horriblest thing to say, but it really, for me, that's how I almost describe it because it was like the only thing I cared about was myself and my feelings. I was very internal.
mm,
And I didn't know any better at the time. I really, really didn't. I mean, it's interesting to reflect on it from so long ago because like now I kind of understand like that internalizing of my thoughts because I'm much more I don't know, much more aware of what's going on around me. But
yeah.
at the time I really wasn't aware. And I just felt like no one understood me. I couldn't talk to anyone. And I just felt like they couldn't understand the pain, even if I tried to sort of explain the pain I was going in.
Mm,
So, but I don't even think I explained it very well. I don't even think it was something that I really spoke about. I think this culture is awful for speaking about grief.
mm,
Absolutely. I think, I mean, that's something that I think I keep hearing about. It's like this, especially in the UK and maybe more globally, it's like grief is not something that's really spoken about.
no.
I kind of want to bring like a Day of the Dead in from like other cultures, like celebrating people we've lost. And actually, I mean, my mum been making this rock garden recently,
Mm,
and I asked her if we could make it for people we've lost because it was like it seems like well for me I just didn't talk about it. I found it really hard to celebrate his life. I mean, at the time when he died, it felt really hard to even go through those motions of anything,
mm,
of like celebrating his life or anything. And those I felt like they came later, but I feel like it could have come a lot sooner. Now what I know
mm,
and all this like lack of processing I feel like I went through all sorts of things.
mm.
I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying like I'm fixed and everything's fine and dandy and everything's like that. Um, but yeah, I think like I'm so grateful for like these what understanding these methods to kind of like work through what I'm going through so that I don't have to like just do what I feel like is all on my own.
I think everyone deals with the way of trying to connect with those that they've lost differently. I mean, in terms of me, for example, my grandparents,
Mm,
my mum's dad, who we lost when I was probably about 12 or 13, no, 14, 15 probably. Whenever we go up to Cleethorpes or Grimsby, which is where my gran lives, we always had an ice cream on the beach, whether it was sunny, rainy, windy, whatever the weather. Even if we had to sit in the car and eat the ice cream, we'll
mm,
do that. And because he drove there, and so it's kind of like whenever I do go up there, that's something we'll do, and it's my way of remembering him. And with my dad's mum, I know I haven't eaten them all, but the pack of Twiglets in the cupboard. That whenever we had Christmas round theirs, and they had the selection of buffet stuff, or
mm,
my grandma would always organise a selection of buffet stuff. Twiglets was always there, and it's the only time I had them throughout the year because it was. And then ever since, I've just kind of tried to have them around Christmas time because it reminds, kind of keeps them in memory. But
mm.
obviously, a rock garden is not something I've thought of. I don't know if it's something I would think of doing for people
That's-
that my dad planted a rose in his garden because as in a white rose plant because that's my grandma's favorite flower. So
mm,
that's his way of trying to remember her. But for me, it's the sentimental things that we did or that were provided that
mm,
kind of um keep keep them in the loop.
mm.
So
I feel like this is a thing that really interests me about the loss of my own friend because I feel like he was in a really bad mental state at the time. And this sounds really odd for me, and I always kind of like reflect on this because I feel like what I did, I grieved him, but I didn't grieve him passing in some ways because I actually felt like he was at rest. But I was massively hurting. So
Mm,
I sometimes liken it to the fact that maybe it was more the fact that I felt way more misunderstood in those moments of trying to kind of I mean maybe I just felt like I don't know, I can't really explain it. It's really hard to sort of describe it. Um but I couldn't like I just felt like I couldn't connect with everyone else.
mm,
It felt like I was isolated from I lost one person, but then I isolated and disconnected from everyone else as well.
mm,
And I'm not sure why. I mean, I've had other people die in my life that didn't have the same impact, not even slightly. But most of the time, they're usually my grandparents who were kind of older. Maybe some people I wasn't close to, didn't know as well. I don't know. I mean, obviously, grief is all different for all sorts of different people and different things. And
mm,
I know people who grieve their grandparents like they're their best friend. Absolutely, like it's not. It's just maybe the relationship I had with them. But I don't know why this one was so significant for me in this way. But I don't know whether it's because I just felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. My close friends weren't good friends with him, so I couldn't talk to them. In fact, I actually felt isolated because
mm,
of it, because because of their dislike for him.
mm,
And then I struggled massively to speak to anyone close to me because I wasn't necessarily with talkative people. I don't think I was necessarily being able to talk about it myself. It just,
mm,
I don't know. It was like the amount of support I probably should have had, I didn't. And I didn't know how to help myself. And I think what's interesting is also like I also went to therapy. I started like I think I should have gone to therapy years ago, maybe. But but when my friend died, I was like, that's it, I'm getting help. I kind of knew I needed help. Definitely. I think
mm,
before then I'd felt like wasn't deserving of help, which I think nowadays I now reflect on being
yeah.
a very interesting thought process to have. And actually I think more of us should seek the help we need. But I think when my friend died, I was like, I need help. There's absolutely no way that I cannot. And I always reflect on this of being like, I'm actually, it was interesting the help that I got because it wasn't helpful. It didn't feel helpful in any way. I had like therapy. I even saw a grief counselor at one point. I also had CBT, and none of it felt like it helped.
Mm,
And I always wonder why. And I think the therapy, for example, seemed to be like looking back at my like childhood, for example, and sort of like feel like it just kept opening up old wounds.
mm,
And all it did was make me cry for an hour, and then I would leave, and then I would be like, I feel worse. I never felt better from that.
mm,
And I think that, oh, I don't know, for all sorts of reasons, it just sort of like didn't resonate with me. I think I struggled to go back to it because it was like I did not see the sort of light at the end of the tunnel with why this was helpful. Just talking about stuff that actually was nothing to do with my friend as well. I
mm,
felt like if I'd been able to speak about him, maybe it would have been a little bit more helpful, maybe.
yeah.
But I wasn't even speaking about him. I felt the whole process very bizarre. And then when I had the grief counselor person, this was like a few years later. So when I was starting my master's, I think, and I moved to Oxford, um, I then sought help again. Oh, I sought help in different like yes, the second help I felt was CBT
Mm,
when I was doing my year out in Chesterfield. And again, that just didn't feel like it helped. It was kind of like trying to like put a patch on what was going on. It felt like it wasn't really giving me focus. I was also suffering from massive amounts of panic attacks at the time. I was a mess. I just turned into a complete like I thought I was a mess when I was a teenager. I was like I just like completely crashed and crumbled and I think this is why again why I want to really get this information out there to people because I did not have a healthy life. My friend dying was like the tip of the iceberg. No, is that right? Cherry on top. Is that what
yeah,
I mean?
cherry on top, tip of the iceberg is just the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, which is not really what I mean, is
No,
it? It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. I always get all of my what they call sayings mixed up.
needle in the haystack.
Um, yeah, it just felt like it collapsed my entire world.
Mm,
And if was probably going to be okay going through uni, like I would like I don't know. It just really makes me reflect on the fact that like there's so many better ways to live these days. So many better ways, and there's so many people like hurting out there. And it
mm,
doesn't even have to be grief as in like the loss of a person.
mm,
It could be grief because of a loss of a relationship, breakdown of a marriage, divorce, or your parents getting divorced or something. Like
mm.
some loss, something that you just can't process. Moving house, for example, is strangely like for me was always been a massive loss. I remember when we moved into here,
Yeah,
that was actually still a massive loss, and we didn't even move very far.
yeah. Well, you
So
didn't. I did.
yeah,
Further
fair
than
enough.
you.
I think it's like the change. Everything changes when you move. Everything changes
Yeah.
because you're processing different ways of living every time, every single little thing. And I think the brain has to basically go through a whole restructuring of what is now happening.
Mm,
And I think that's what happens when you lose someone. Your brain is now going, but that, wait, but that existed and now it doesn't. But like it just can't process it unless you kind of help it process it. I
mm,
think that's how I feel about it. Um, and I've experienced family loss recently, and I feel like in some weird way this podcast couldn't have come at a better time, but also like it is so devastating to lose a family member. And
mm,
and and what's weird is like I'm grieving, but it's not even a family member I knew. It's actually like um but I can feel the hurt of the family. I can feel like I resonate with it so much. And I've been working through that last few weeks. And it's hard, it reminds me so much about what happened when my friend died.
mm,
Um, and I find it very like there's few like sort of the same sort of feelings coming up.
mm,
Not obviously as severe, not even nearly as severe as they were,
mm,
for a couple of reasons, I think. Um, but obviously I didn't know the person, it's a bit different.
mhm,
Um, and I guess I didn't have that direct connection. But the fact that I'm still grieving and mourning a loss
mm.
of someone I didn't know is it's really interesting
Yeah.
because it's like that loss of life, that loss of connection, that loss, like that sudden loss as well. Something you're not expecting, and that hurts people around you that you love,
Mm,
and that feels painful for me because I'm like, and I think like what I learned as well is like the grieving, the mourning process kind of always happens. You'll always go through a state of being in shock or not understanding. I mean, unless maybe you've had like something happen over time and you've kind of got okay with it. I think that's a bit different. You've had time to process it, maybe. But I think a loss of someone is devastating anyway.
I think for me, if I knew the person, whether I had a close connection with them or not, then I might feel something depending how close they are in the family or to the family. But if it's a family member of some sort that I've never actually met before,
hmm,
I might, I'll probably feel different, obviously, depending what, how, it affects other family members will be probably depend how much I get involved in supporting or wanting to be involved. But if I don't know, it was a long lost cousin or something that I've never met before, and
I mean, that's the thing, you can't know.
yeah,
I guess you won't know until you get there. And I think that sometimes is the most scary thing.
if family members that I knew obviously well were going, and it's something that would help support them or something, then I would want to get involved or want to go. But depending who's going, I mean, if it's all family that relate to their other side that I know nothing about, then it might be a different story. I might not want to get involved if no one I know is going specifically.
usually going.
to a funeral
Mm.
of someone. Sorry to
I was thinking
yeah
like, I know we've been talking
to a
about this a lot.
funeral of the person that's gone. But again, I've never actually had it happen before, so I can't.
Mm.
This is just going by what I know I would be feeling at the moment because uh yeah, I've not had many cases of it happening, so I don't know the full extent. This is how I feel. I believe I'll be thinking.
I mean, I've got a bit of an interesting reflection on my part of what you kind of just said, because like this is the first probably loss I've had since I've felt a lot better about grief and stuff. And actually, when I'm trying to think when my nan died, is that before or after my friend? I genuinely don't remember actually. But my friend dying is like the most significant loss I feel I've had. But when I've had other losses, like my cousin died only like a few years after him, really.
Mm,
It's so funny because I had two quite significant losses. One in my third year of uni, and the other one, oh, in the first year of my master's. Yeah, I think it was like that. It wasn't my final year, but yeah. Anyway, um, it does make concentrating on uni work rather difficult when this happens.
yes, I can imagine.
Um, but I also think like, because I was already in so much pain at the time, I'm wondering whether I even knew, like, could tell the difference if I lost someone else at the time. Because it's making me think now, like, my cousin dying was devastating, absolutely devastating, and it was shocking.
Mm,
And then I've had, quite a number of grandparents die, and I always relate to the fact that my friend was hit me the most.
mm,
But now I'm grieving someone who I didn't even know, I have never met, and so therefore, I mean, maybe it's the circumstances to which they died. Part of me wonders whether like I now noticing the difference between when I was grieving and when I wasn't. Because I know for a long time I was literally in a state of grief for like a long time. Like the amount of stress on my body was ridiculous. I wasn't physically well a lot of the time.
mm,
And I remember the first 3 years of losing my friend being the absolute worst. And I think that's kind of also when my cousin died.
mm.
So can you imagine like I just like I didn't notice the difference because I was already devastated.
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know, this is kind of an interesting one because um like now I've genuinely felt so much better. The first time I felt like I've been genuinely being able to deal with all of the losses in my life.
Mm,
And this one comes along and you're like, yeah, this really hurts again. And I've not felt this kind of pain for a loss since my friend.
mm,
I don't know. That's a really interesting one.
yeah.
Um, because I was surprised. I was surprised at like how little difference I felt when I've had other losses.
Mm,
Um, And I was like, and that's a really interesting to reflect on. It's like, just because you don't feel as much pain doesn't mean you don't feel like that person didn't matter to you or anything. I think like there's different levels of thing. I mean, I know there's all sorts of different ways that you could possibly feel good or bad about certain things. And
mm,
sometimes we might feel like we need to be in pain in order to know that we cared.
mm,
It's like, I know I cared a hell of a lot about everyone I've lost.
yeah,
The fact that I didn't physically feel like in huge amounts of pain, I think I just felt relieved that I didn't,
yeah.
because I knew how hard it was when my friend died. Like it completely devastated me in any way I could possibly think of. I don't know how else to describe it apart from that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's an interesting thing because I don't think you should ever diminish any form of grief or loss at all. I mean, it depends how you feel about it.
Mm,
And yeah, maybe it was circumstances, maybe it was, types of passing because some are more shocking than others. So, and also with my friend, I didn't know how he died. That has always been the biggest shocker to me. I
mm,
genuinely like I grieved his loss from self-infliction and I grieved his loss on an accident front.
mm,
So it was like I I was terrified of getting into cars. I also would have panic attacks if I got into a car
yeah.
at the time around the time I think it was about a year after he died. I started having major panic attacks and I couldn't get into cars anymore. Or I was terrified of being on a bus because I was afraid of having an accident. And I was like that, irrationally, I mean, or
Rationally,
irrationally,
yeah.
that doesn't make any sense because I know he didn't die from a bus accident.
Hmm.
But my emotional side is just going, every alarm bell set off all sorts of things.
Mm,
Um, yeah, and it was so interesting because like, and again, like I just feel like I grieved for way too long. And I'm not saying that you can or can't grieve for like long periods of time if you kind of want to, but I didn't want to. I did not want to be feeling that way for like the length of time that I did.
Mm.
I think that's the most devastating thing to me because I feel like I lost, not lost my career, but I decided, for all sorts of reasons, my mental health and state was not great for so long.
Mm.
I didn't want to continue to be an architect, which I trained for too many years.
Yeah, how's that?
Yeah. I it was just not something. I mean, actually, I'm really much happier, I guess, with what I'm doing now.
Mm.
That I don't grieve. I do grieve my career actually in some ways. I've still got some work to do there on my career. I know I've done some work on it, but I know I've got more to do.
Yeah.
That I think would improve how I feel towards like the loss of my previous career. But I genuinely think that what I do now is so much more meaningful. Of like trying to connect with people and actually, and we'll talk about this in a different episode, but like we were speaking briefly, about communication earlier, and I could talk on probably like, let's talk on a whole new episode about communication
Yeah.
because I think it's,
That would be a whole new
I
episode. That would just be one episode in general.
think with 5 episodes, just about like how
Communication.
no one can communicate with each other. I mean, that's how I felt. I feel like I couldn't communicate with anyone but what I was were doing or like anything. And I didn't know how to read other people's communication, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm.
and I know that we've had lots of conversations about like how we could better communicate.
Keeping communication with each other.
Yeah, keeping communication, but also bettering communication.
Mm.
And I always love the fact that I learned how, like over the last few years, I've learned how to communicate with people. Because it genuinely felt like I didn't know how to communicate.
Mm.
It was like a skill I needed to learn. And I think like we take for granted sometimes
Mm.
that we all just know how to communicate. We know how to receive communication. Bed, you're right. Um, you're gonna go in bed. And I think like I've got so much to say about it. What was the thing we were talking about recently about communication? Do you remember?
I don't know. We've spoken a lot about everything.
Yeah, I know. Tim is like sadly is I wouldn't say guinea pig, but like, you know,
Guinea pig.
okay, I wasn't yeah, you get a lot of the like my internal conversations and my internal thoughts about what I think about everything and anything to do with the world and how I can better help people with mental health issues and I'm more focused on grief. I think grief has become one of the things that I didn't even know I like. It felt like it was what like it felt like a calling. I really, I'm not the kind of person who believes in fate and stuff, but it did kind
Mm.
of feel a bit like it really resonates with the fact that like I feel like loss has been my life, and that sounds really sad,
Mm.
but it does genuinely feel like I've had so many losses, and I feel like that's how I've been living my life with losses and grieving and wanting different and this
Mm.
and the other. And it feels like if you look at most aspects of my life, I have some form of loss, some form of
Mm.
big or little loss that basically impacted me in some form of way. And it just kept rolling one into the other. And I just feel like it really was my life.
Yeah.
And if anyone is like that at all, that feels like their life is like essentially lost, it's,
Yeah.
oh, it's not a fun place to be.
No, it's not.
And I battle with like losses, we battle with losses every day. But like, I think, being able to know how to deal with them on a day-to-day basis, oh my God, it's just like changed my life. I
Yeah.
think like I'm far happier. I think like I used to live in chronic stress. I wish I'd been diagnosed with chronic stress because genuinely that's what it felt like. But and so I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome because I couldn't function. But
Mm.
it's whether that was due to the grief or not, I don't know directly. But I mean, it just I think um I just all these things sort of compound into one into the other. I just think like I I I want to help people get help, work through all this stuff because
Yeah.
it's not fun.
No, I think it's just how everyone is going to perceive or view it in their own, obviously act it in their own way, I'm guessing. I guess that's the difficult part too, because obviously you can say it how it's working for you, but it'll be dealt with or done differently with someone.
Yeah.
I mean, when you try and in the nicest way possible, you try and help me, but it doesn't always go the same, give the same result because I see things or I act on things quite differently in terms of dealing with my emotions or stress or
Yeah, I think you're on your own journey. I think like I've always kind of made sure that you come to things in your own choice. And I think I go on about choice quite a lot in when I speak about things because choice of healing and choice of how to heal is so important.
mm,
And I know that I get very enthusiastic and I want to like be like, here, have all this information. And again, this is, you know, one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast, because I want people to come to this information sort of more genuinely, naturally, maybe.
mm,
Um, because it is your own journey. It is kind of an understanding of your own. And yeah, I've had to sort of back off and you've had to go and get like other professional help that you find kind of maybe aligns with you or kind of go on your own journey, I
mm,
guess, to find um I mean, I definitely think this method works for like it's worked for so many other people. I can't
mm.
imagine it doesn't work for you, but I guess it's like I feel like it's kind of like
I have to be in the right frame of mind or the right mindset or the
sort of.
want to do that particular process.
I guess so, yeah. I think I mean that's yeah, it's kind of hard to describe it like that. I think like because we
I
all
think
have different belief systems. We all have different kind of ways
I
that we
think
think.
we've tried it before where I think you were suggesting me to try a specific method which I acted upon, but I think because I wasn't in there in the
Yeah,
mindset
because
of it, I
you
it wasn't as effective as it probably should have been.
well, this is so this is what I put down to maybe like we talked about like people pleasing, didn't we?
Mm.
Because I was like, I asked you after you'd done it because you said there wasn't much of a difference, and I think like, were you doing it for me or were you doing it for you? And
I think it was more partly both, but I don't at that point I was wanting to try and do it for me, but at the same time it was because you were wanting to try and help. I was I guess subconsciously I was doing it for you more than me, but I was trying to think it was me more than you.
yeah, which is really hard because if you're trying to do something that is like, you know, you're genuinely trying to heal for someone else, it's just not going to work.
No.
I mean, it might work to an extent, but I think like the power in it is like the fact that you are choosing to do this method
Mm.
and you're choosing to do certain things. And I think like yeah, this is like the whole area where responsibility and choice and things come into like, you know, the word responsibility is a bit of a interesting word because it's sort of defined in different ways. But
Hmm.
you know, it's the choice of wanting to do the work for yourself when you're kind of ready to do it, I guess, is how I sort of see it. And I feel like I had to come to I mean, I think this is why like when I like I think I mean I can't really know because obviously when it was like 10 years ago, my choice was to heal, definitely. And I'm not saying that people don't want to heal. I'm not saying that you don't want to heal.
Mm.
I guess there's like there's other internal barriers like we kind of maybe have to work through to get to a point. And also there's a belief.
Mm.
Like I want to like try and explain this process to people in a way that like makes them believe that it can work because if you don't believe it even works,
Mm.
that's really interesting. I always think like beliefs are really fascinating because if you don't believe something works, it's very hard to follow through on something and sort of like keep doing that thing.
Mm.
I guess um it's like if you believe in God and you were doing loads of stuff you know to to do for him versus someone who doesn't. And you're like, if someone who's an atheist is then sort of doing loads of things for God and they're thinking, why am I doing this? They have no belief, they have no sort of direct connection with what that means.
Mm.
Then they're going to feel very lost if they're doing all this stuff. Whereas someone who believes is going to be like, of course I'm doing this because I'm doing this for this purpose. And they will have a much more regimented and much more clear view of why they're doing something.
Mm.
And I think that's really interesting. I think like me and Tim have only been together, well, coming up to 3 years now.
Almost 3 years, yeah.
Um, and again, it's been interesting because I've had to kind of almost like in a not sort of like a motherly way, but like, you know, I've had to kind of like take a step back with you
Mm.
and just be like, you know, you're your own human, you've got your own journey to go on and things like this. And I
Mm.
always say, like, you know, when you're ready for certain things, I'm here. Um, and I think it's really hard for me in some ways because
You just want to help.
I want to yeah, it's really interesting because like it's like as much as you might want to help someone, you do really have to take a step back if that person is not
Mm.
ready to receive. And again, this is why I want people to make their own choice about stuff and
I
it's
think it
really
depends because there
interesting.
have been times when I've been, I mean, not long after we got together, I was struggling with something that maybe not go into detail of it now, maybe another podcast, but you did nudge me along the right path of what I needed to do. But
Well, you've come a long way from when we
I,
first met.
I get it, it depends on what you're wanting the other person to do in terms of how emotional or how effective it could be because what you did for me at the beginning of our relationship, I probably wouldn't have been able to do without your assistance or nudging or anything. But what you tried to get me to do a couple of months ago or whenever it was more,
Yeah, they're two completely different things. I
yeah.
think like self-hurt
So
healing.
depending what you're trying to
Yeah, one
suggest to
was
other
more
people,
practical than one was like one was just yeah, filling some
yeah. So
paperwork
it
in.
depends on what it is as to how uh beneficial your persuading or persuasion or what however you want to put it will be, I guess.
I mean, that's a bit different. I mean, like that's because like you know, us having a relationship is a bit different to like
Yeah.
helping other people. But yeah,
No.
no, I think emotionally helping people is very different to like yeah, what you're kind of alluding to. And
Yeah.
obviously, you don't want to talk about it right now, so I won't press for it. Um, but yeah, no, I think you're making a really good point though. Like the emotional healing of stuff is so bad. The emotional healing is the bit that really is something that like is very difficult for someone else to help you with. Hello. Um,
He's gonna try and climb up in a second.
no, he's all right. And I think that I find that really fascinating because I think like for all sorts of reasons, I see all sorts of people kind of going through life and you kind of and it's what's really interesting because I did a really powerful process a couple of months ago, didn't I?
Mm.
And I should have done it months ago. I should have done it at the beginning of last year, and I didn't. I waited almost like 12 months in order to do it. Come on. Sorry. Um, yeah, I waited like 12 months for it, and I kind of like in the back of my head, I'm like, I wish I'd done it sooner. But at the same time, there's part of me that's like, it just came to like, I guess, like again, I don't believe in fate, but I guess this feels a bit like fate sometimes. It's like it came to me at the time I needed it to come to me.
Mm.
Um, you want to get involved, don't you? I know you do.
He's next week's guest speaker.
Yeah, I know. We'll put you. You'll put him in the chair with Tim. Oh well,
Often, not with me.
we're not with you. And I just think like, I just yeah, I don't know. There's part of me that thinks like, oh God, I wish I'd done that sooner. But at the same time, I'm like, it just wasn't happen. It just wasn't meant to happen at the time.
Mm.
And I think like when you get to a point where you like kind of wish you'd done something months ago, I guess that's when you kind of know you should have. It resonates with you and you kind of cheeky little dog. Hey, bird. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right, all right, all right. This little dog is a Brittany, and he's so cheeky, full of beans, and we do a lot of training with him, and he's just so funny. But yeah, I constantly have dog biscuits lying around. I try and train him, don't I? And now like I have dog biscuits in my hand, he's like sat in his bed like, I'm a good boy. You're so funny. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I think like eventually you'll get to a place where like I said, I think you've improved so much. I think it's almost like it's hard to even recognize how much you've improved.
Yeah, I have
Like,
no idea.
yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? From my perspective, I'm like, you weren't very talkative when we first met, and now we will talk about your feelings and stuff. And I
Mm.
think like, ironically, you're always more talkative than most of the people I've spoken to about certain things. But um I think like you were open to learning more about it. And I think that's like the first step is just like you were open to like being curious about talking about your feelings and wanting to kind of open up about. certain things and communicate. And again, coming back to communication, it's like if you can like have that idea that be almost curious about communication or want to better communicate,
Mm.
it can only get better for you, I guess, because we've had some really interesting conversations about all sorts of things. Um, yeah, just to like improve our relationship
Mm.
because we both met each other at completely different points in like good points in our lives, but like
Yeah.
like you had certain expectations, I had certain expectations, and we kind of obviously like to make a relationship work, you've got to marry those expectations almost. They've got to align in some way, I guess.
Yeah.
That's how I maybe think about it. Like if you're both communicating in completely different ways, I think that's how most relationships break.
Yeah.
You know, not that I'm a relationship coach or anything, but like it's definitely something I've thought about. And
Mm.
communication is a huge part of most people's either pain or not pain, um, for all sorts of things.
Mm.
Yeah. Have you got any other thoughts?
I'm all out for now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a good episode. I think
Yeah.
this is better than the test episodes we did.
No, I prefer the test episodes.
They
They're just out of this world.
were a bit
They're the
considering
bloopers.
the bloopers, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Considering you've never been on the screen before, I think it's yeah, I think it's been really interesting. I think it's like it's a good place to begin and start and like
Any professional directors that like me, then just take me on for any acting courses.
hey, you did acting in school. You did more than I did.
I did drama in school, and I also did, yeah, I did a couple of plays when I was younger, but I played Santa Claus in my year three play.
Did you?
Yeah. I had to walk down in the middle of the aisle at the beginning saying ho 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 three times and then get to the stage and then do
Oh, I
some
think I
acting.
remember you saying, yeah. Oh dear. No, I hated, absolutely hated it. I think drama was probably the worst thing, which is so funny because now I one of my hobbies is working with an Amdram group, which I find hilarious, but I mostly do backstage stuff. But
Mm.
I do think like my world has been opened up so much by all sorts of things nowadays. Um, that's made things more possible than I ever like. I didn't have hobbies when I was younger.
Mm.
But maybe I was so engrossed in my architecture degree. But even then, I think even as a kid, I didn't even have. Well, when as a teenager, I didn't have many hobbies. I think like when I was a kid, I had hobbies.
Mm.
Um, but I think when I started like suffering from mental health stuff, which was around, um, I don't know, it was like middle, young teenager.
Don't say middle.
Oh yes, middle is one of his cues. My dog's cues. Oh dear dog. I know. You want to get involved. But I didn't ask for this, did I? I'm gonna get a camera on the dog sometimes. It's just so funny what he does. He like tries his best to be so good, don't you, buddy? Hey, can you go on your bed, please? Alice. You're so funny. Yeah, okay. Well, I
Yeah.
think that's been a really good episode. And if you wanna well, this is the first episode, so hopefully there'll be more coming out, unless this goes really badly and then and I decide not to do anymore. But I don't think that's gonna happen because I think this is like all this information is so worth sharing for me. I just like I couldn't think of a better way to kind of like get the
Mm.
voice out there and just get
Yeah.
more kind of I don't know
No,
more
your words.
information or more kind of like maybe like even just like people resonating with my story and stuff. So
Mm.
like
Should get some guest speakers on and I want to be involved.
like who?
I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
find someone.
Yeah, when we become super famous, then we can
Yeah.
get all the guest speakers on. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have 10 million followers.
Yeah, 10 million. That's our aim. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All the best for ourselves anyway. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent.
TTFN.
Bye.
Bye.
I've been Pip.
And I'm Tim. It's good night from me and it's good night from her.
I think you ripped that from something.
No.
No, not at all. We can always have serious conversations about things that are serious.
Of course. No, we can't.
No, I think we spend most of our time joking.
Yeah.
Anyway, bye.
Bye.